So we'll move into our second pillar, which is our treatment pillar. This involves treating people with HIV rapidly and effectively to reach sustained viral suppression. So some of the activities we've included in this portion involve improving rapid access to care by collaborating with the Ryan White Part A and Florida Department of Health Office to add eligibility staff to help support our linkage teams, and also utilizing telehealth as part of the test and treat model of care. We're also contracting with community-based organizations that are conducting HIV testing in our area. We're expanding our outpatient medical services to include after-hours support, as well as expanding medical case management to help support those efforts as well. Another example is to increase peer support services, and then to coordinate those wraparound services that people need, the transportation assistance, food, housing support, to help address some of those social determinants of health that are going to help increase retention and care for individuals living with HIV. So our first question involves, how will the new eligibility staff integrate with our current test and treat models of care?
So currently with our test and treat model, and this is something that has been utilized since 2017, about providing rapid access to HIV care. So we're not more so focusing on getting that eligibility done first, and then once you get that done, then you can actually see the provider. No, we're flipping that around where we're actually providing that access to a medical provider. They will get labs done. And if the medical provider deems necessary, then they will go ahead and start medication as well. Then on the end part, you can start your eligibility process. What we're adding another layer to that is utilizing telemedicine, because I'm sure, as everyone know, with COVID, that has taught us to, whether you're going to be with it or without it, you're going to have to start this process with telemedicine. So adding that piece where we're providing more comfort level. If we're out in the field doing testing and someone tests is positive, we have that access to be able to do that through telemedicine. If someone is in the clinic and we only have 2 providers that day, the Florida Department of Health has a system with telemedicine that provides access to all 67 counties within the state. So we're just trying to add another layer to this through the use of telemedicine.
And that creates a virtual appointment sort of structure
Definitely.
for people who need that access in the community,
Definitely,
right?
yes.
Having virtual appointments directly with a provider. Excellent. So what are some of the strategies to increase retention and care? Or the strategies to increase retention and care include expanding test and treat after hours and increasing peer and case management services. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Claudia?
Yeah, so in order to really reach the goal of the ending the HIV epidemic, of reducing new cases by 75% in the next 5 years, we really have to listen to the community. What does that community need? What have they expressed as a challenge to access care and to really engage in their HIV treatment? So based on the feedback that we've received from the community, after hours has been an instrument challenge for them. So we really want to expand medical care, including providers, case management, peer support, all the care that a client may need. We want to be able to offer them on non-traditional hours, because our population is working more, and it's a challenge to receive services from just 9 to 5. So we have increased the number of providers that are able to provide care after 5 and during the weekends, in order to really provide a seamless approach and a seamless process to link to care and really reach our goal of ending the HIV epidemic.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about the wraparound services that are going to be available?
Yeah, so we really want to provide additional services to those that need it the most. So we really want to use this funding to provide intensive case management for clients that are not virally suppressed. And that intensive case management includes the help with housing, with food, with transportation, with medical nutrition services, to whatever the client may need, because when you do not have those basic needs met, you're not going to focus on your HIV medication. So we want to be able to address all of the barriers that a client may have in order for them to be able to engage in care and stay in care.
Awesome. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I just want to add it on top of all these initiatives from telehealth. We have the mobile health unit, which is consists of meeting the client where they are. We're moving around the city of Orlando to meet the client where they are, and when they take the test, regardless of the outcome of the test, we are equipped to handle it. So either if they want PrEP, we will be able to provide them access to medication right on the spot. If the test was positive, they need to start medication. Why there, they will not leave the mobile unit without medication. So that's what we're talking about, ending the HIV epidemic by providing immediate access to care.
Mm-hmm. And will that include eligibility support as part of a mobile testing site?
Mobile testing site, yes.
And treatment, yes. Excellent. All right. So a next question is for our community advocates. So tell us how telehealth and treat programs can be developed with diverse patient populations in mind.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things is always the capacity building of those individuals that are going to be delivering the training, that are going to be delivering the services. Because one, you have to make sure that everybody that is involved in the decision-making process is actually a part of that community. You know, the solutions for the Haitian community, for the Latinx community, are not going to come from outside those communities by somebody that is just an observer. So you always have to make sure that you have that meaningful engagement. And the other piece is, we always talk about meeting people where they're at, but sometimes sometimes meeting people where they're at means sitting across the way from somebody that has views about people living with HIV that you might not necessarily agree with, that might even be offensive. And you have to take yourself out of the equation in those terms. And it's like, I can't meet this person with either aggression or I know more than you. I have to meet you where you're at and be humble in that sense. Whatever you tell me that you believe about HIV, that you believe about how people get HIV, that's your belief. I'm just here to make sure you get into care.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
When it comes to telehealth, I think it's one of those things where when we're talking about overcoming stigma, and we've also talked about stigma comes from inside. A lot of times people don't feel comfortable with the follow-up. They're okay with the test, but they're not okay with the follow-up. They're not okay with seeing what the result is. The result is where a little bit of the anxiety comes from. And when a person feels like they're in an environment where they're a little bit more supported, or they'll be in a house and their friend is a little bit off camera and they're welcome to that, or they're there and their husband, or spouse or partner is in the next room, or their kids are there and they get, whether it's good news or bad news, you know what I'm saying? They have that support around them at home or wherever they're at. Or if they're taking their telehealth appointment from, another provider's office, they're already in an environment where they can be supported through whatever may come that day.
Very true. Anything else?
Well, I would say that a big barrier that we are all working towards overcoming as a system is understanding that truly this is an ecosystem, right? Telehealth is one solution. The other one is the mobile units, the emergency rooms. All of these are different solutions that are just basically being weaved together to create the kind of no wrong door approach that will ultimately result in changing the course of how things are going right now, right? So when you're thinking about how do I tell, say, for example, an immigrant community that they can get on a phone call with the doctor and it's fine, it's normal, it's not, you don't have to be the old-fashioned way anymore. And also in communities that the one-on-one approach is just more successful, then we will have the mobile unit to do that instead, right? So it's also knowing that the telehealth is not the only solution. It's one out of many.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I would also like to add that because I see the peer support piece on there.
Shameless plug for peer support.
No, but that's actually something that comes to mind, right? So Andre informed me that Positive Assistant has a group in Creole that meets in person, right? And if the individuals that meet there and get their support from that, if they during their week are like, hey, I need extra support, I need another support system, that's one of the things we can start to think about is how do we get all these support groups that exist in different organizations and treat it all as a giant ecosystem of support where just because we meet on Wednesdays doesn't mean I'm not going to encourage you to go to the other group that meets on Thursdays, because that way I have constant contact with people that are getting me through whatever I need to get through. And that's how you can think of telehealth. Like, there are still organizations that are providing, telehealth support groups Monday through Friday, and you can log in anytime you want and get that sense of support. So it's really, how do we all build our resources so that we're working together and not in this sense of maybe a little bit of competition, which sometimes happens.
Mm-hmm. And a couple of you have given these examples already, but peer support is really important in that aspect, because especially when we're thinking of our communities of people who are aging with HIV and we're talking about telehealth programs, there's a different level of support that's needed, right? And so can we talk about some examples of strategies that we can use to make sure that we're meeting those needs as well, especially as we look to implement new programs through telehealth?
I think Divas in Dialogue and Miracle of Love, some of the strategies that we're taking to address that is putting people who share a similar understanding of life or similar mindset, not necessarily about everything, but trans identified individuals of color who whether they have a diagnosis or not, putting them in a space where we're breaking the stigma of people who have received that diagnosis or not, kind of showing them what it is to thrive and live, that there shouldn't be a stigma because you already know someone, with HIV. So putting them in a mindset where they are more acclimated not only to break the stigma, but to become more engaged in care. We engage people on multiple levels of whether it's a social thing where we go out and we have fun, or we have support groups where we talk to each other, whether we have learning cohorts where there's subjects that we all want to learn about and we all come together to learn those things. Learning and sharing and being in a space with other people across the diagnosis parameters, it puts us all in a place of normalcy. It puts us in a place where a conversation can happen where they don't normally happen. I've seen conversations just open up like, girl, you've been out there in sex work for a little bit and I don't see you take condoms, you know what I'm saying? I don't see you go get tested. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? I'm out there too. You know what I'm saying? Right. Sex worker to sex worker. I'm out there too, and I'm taking care of myself. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Normalizing those conversations that can be had brother to brother, sister to sister, sibling to sibling, on a more real basis where you can kind of make that connection in the moment. That kind of engagement can make or break whether a person takes their care seriously.
Exactly.
Excellent.
I do want to say, because when we talk about the aging piece as well, part of that is that we have to engage the organizations that are already doing work with the aging population, right? So when you think about the center and their OWL program, it's like, how do you bring HIV competency to that program? When you think about the big names like AARP that are already working with seniors, it's like, how do we get them to be more cognizant about the fact that there's rising numbers of STI cases among our senior population? And then on a community level, what we have to think is, if I'm going to go to a group that is mostly made up of seniors, I don't just have to bring HIV competency. I might also have to create a part of my training that focuses on how to access telehealth. Because I can't just be there like, and then you can log in and it happens. Like, I might have to actually walk them through what it means, So how do we adapt the trainings that we have so that they meet the needs of the population?
I think that there are two major groups of people who are aging with HIV, right? So some are folks who were diagnosed when they're younger, and now they're, in their 60s, or approaching their 70s. They're getting to that place of retirement. And then there are folks who were diagnosed when they were already older, right? And those are two different realities, two different people that require very specific kinds of approaches and outreach strategies, really, right? So I completely agree with Andres, right? This I sometimes I think to myself, man, am I talking on an echo chamber all the time? Like I see the same people all the time. And that's great. Honestly, it's amazing because then I know that I have people like the people here who care about the same things I care about, right? But the truth is that the majority of the folks that we're trying to reach are not here or don't know what we know. They grew up in a different generation. They have, it's hard for them to talk about sex or to even talk about the idea of an older person having sex, which in our society is so taboo, right? That somehow a person grows older and then they don't want to have sex anymore. That's just not the truth. So we have to work on our own stigma.
Exactly.
And do the work first, within ourselves. And then be ready to answer the questions that Andres was talking about, and going outside of our group, be unapologetic about that too.
I think you bring up a good point, Felipe, in terms of getting out of our comfort zones, because I'll give the example where I had staff was like, "Oh, we're going to go to a retirement home and test," and I'm just thinking, and that's my own personal bias, but they proved me wrong. That I said, we're not going to get that many numbers. It was one lady that was in that retirement home, rounded up all of her friends, and she said, all of us going to get tested. And I would have never thought that we would have been able to bring in like a group of people. It was over 20 people that got tested in that retirement facility. So I think we have to take our own biases out of it, especially like when we're dealing with the aging population, when we're dealing with the faith-based community, because a lot of times they want to get the information. It's just how it's presented to them. So I think if we put like a more intentional basis on how we provide this education to multiple people, not just the people that we are in the same circles with, but to those individuals that we need to get the information to, and take out our own biases out of it and make sure we providing that access.
And I was going to add to that because I think it's a perfect tie in, the power of one. Once again, I know that we use this language all the time, but for anybody that's new, peer, what does that even mean? It means that, peer-to-peer, meaning that I've had that lived experience, whatever it may be, and I probably got some education or something from an organization. And now my job as a peer is to educate and empower other individuals so that they too can elevate themselves to whichever level they choose. So basically, unlike a doctor saying, take your medication, it's a peer, another person living with HIV, explaining to me the importance, not just from a medical, but also from their personal lived experience. And we've talked a lot about that, which I think underscores the idea of the fact that we need more people around the table. So shameless plug, ending the epidemic requires you. So we've talked about this, the power of one person at a center that may or may not have already been included in the conversation, got 20 people tested. So, if you're sitting out there on the sidelines thinking, what am I gonna do, or how can I do this? I mean, there is a perfect example of how literally every single person that hears this has the ability to change the lives of your own community. We all have a role to play in this. And the only way that we can do that is by stepping up, by contacting Divas in Dialogue. How do I get involved? The Central Florida HIV Planning Council, Talk, Test, Treat. You could, talk to any one of them and figure out how you yourself could become a peer, really, and communicate the language that you speak to the group and the population that you speak. I think you're right. Like our problem is like it's almost an echo chamber in here, and that's why when I talk about this, I think it's so important that anybody that hears this gets involved, whichever way you want to, And it's just really kind of all of the above. Just reach out to one of the organizations and see how you can be a part of ending the epidemic yourself.
Yeah, I just want to add something about the peer support. When it comes to the ending of HIV epidemic, we believe that peer support is a key when it comes to not only diagnose, retention into care. So people will get tested, they find out about the HIV status, they get started in treatment, but they drop out of care. So the peer support that's the support you need somebody who's going through the same thing that you're going through, or somebody who's been there, and you're like, okay, if that person can successfully stay in care, I can manage to stay in care too. And this is what we need, because right now we notice that a lot of patients, they drop out of care for one reason or the other. But we need to, with peer support, we can bring them back into care and remain into care.
Excellent. Yeah. Because just like the peers understand the challenges, they probably navigated some of those challenges themselves, right? And it's not just about making sure that the patient understands how to manage those challenges, but they can help providers also understand some of the resistance that they're experiencing with clients, right? Excellent. Thank you.